There is a reason why human beings are classified as social animals. It's because we constantly need the presence of other people to verify our own existence. There are many people in our world whom society has shunned for some reason or the other, and they exist in their own loveless bubbles. So when these people find kindness for the first time, they tend to latch onto it. It is an act of love that is pure in intention but is unwanted. Nonetheless, so when the inevitable rejection takes place, dealing with it becomes quite difficult for the person involved. More often than not, it ends up in a blood-soaked tragedy, and that is also the case here. The Keeper of the Hounds is an anime-exclusive apostle who only appears for a cup of coffee in the manga. Most of the community doesn't like him because his presence in the story is an amalgamation of so many different arcs that it feels insulting. But he's also a good case study of how the weak-willed and rejected become easy prey for demonkind. So without further ado, let's get into it. This is Keeper of the Hounds' origins explored. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. He's just the first prey that Guts devotes to his quest for revenge. The Keeper of Hounds in the Berserk manga. You know, we weren't kidding when we said this guy only has a minor role in the manga. The Keeper of the Hounds is actually a nameless apostle that comes after Guts following the eclipse. As the Black Swordsman is resting and gearing up for his grueling hunt, he is unaware that he himself is being haunted. As a branded one, he was basically a bloody offering for the sharks of the ocean in this scenario, and this apostle had a really good nose for tracking his meals. He is chanced upon by a few travelers who try to tell him off for misbalancing their wagon. When they realize they're better off not trying to talk to this guy, sniffing the ground and talking about sacrifices. You can see why this pug-nosed tracker was called the Keeper of the Hounds in the 2016 anime adaptation. After spending a few hours following Guts' scent, he finally comes across him in Godot's hut and prepares to finish the leftovers from that sacred nocturnal feast. As he brags that his nose is really good at following the scent of evil, the apostle assumes his released form, but Guts attacks him mid-transition and lands a nasty blow across one of his two dog-like faces. The Black Swordsman calls his proverbial Keeper of Hounds the first prey of his hunt in the darkness and lops off his left arm with Godot's newly forged sword, thinking he can kill the demon with it. But the blacksmith knows better. He predicts that Guts' sword wouldn't be able to stand up to the apostle's inhuman body, and sure enough, it breaks when he splits the demon's belly open. Disgustingly enough, the Hound Apostle uses the intestines dangling from his body to hurl Guts into Godot's armory. As he approached towards his meal, starved for human flesh, the Hound Apostle didn't realize he'd already sealed his own fate. With Rickert's help, he fires off his arm cannon and halts the Apostle's advance before using Dragon Slayer to cleave him in half. As the Hound Apostle lies dying in a pool of his own blood, Guts admonishes Godot for holding out on him, as he had something much better suited for his fight all along: the Dragon Slayer. That's right, this pug-faced menace became the first casualty of the sword that has become synonymous with Berserk, and for that, we give him a parting salute. But you can see why we called him a minor character now, right? Apart from giving you an idea about how Guts' life was going to be from this point forward, and how the Dragon Slayer was the only thing that could help him keep his life, the Hound Apostle didn't serve any major purpose in the story. By contrast, his anime counterpart had a proper backstory and connections to one of the manga most underrated apostles as well. So let's now dive into his origins, shall we? A loveless man who couldn't take a girl's rejection and sacrificed her for it, the Keeper of the Hounds' origins from Berserk 2016. The Keeper of Hounds appears for maybe 15 minutes in episode 3 of season 1, but everything that transpires in that episode is a way to compress a lot of different things into a single episode. So we'll break it down for you. In the manga, after Guts kidnaps Farnese from the Holy Iron Chain Knights, he is set upon by the malign spirits of the dead near a ravine, and he spends the rest of the night fighting dead spirits and possessed creatures, which also include hounds. After taking care of dozens of demonic canines, Guts' horse ends up falling victim to them, and then he has to clean up residual spirits as well, which ends up with Farnese also getting possessed at the last minute. This order of events remains pretty much the same in the anime, except with a crucial addition. They pass through a mansion that belonged to a certain count and is now haunted by his former kennel master and his many bloodthirsty hounds. If you you guys also raised your eyebrows when we said count, then you're not dreaming. It is heavily implied that this keeper of the hounds used to work for the Slug Count himself. The family portrait hanging in the hall of the mansion that Guts takes Farnese to in order to make her see what his life really was like only shows the daughter's face clearly, but the pose they are all striking is similar to the family portrait of the Slug Count from the manga. In the show, the hounds were actually the keeper's family, whom he could telepathically communicate with, whether they were lucid or possessed. He used this control over them to send them after Guts, Farnese, and Puck, and when Barney tried to take advantage of the situation and escape, that's when we saw his face for the first time. He came out of the room and told Farnese that "who are you?" was a question he should be asking, as he was the keeper of the hounds of this mansion, and she was technically trespassing. She immediately orders him to untie her and promises to see that he is handsomely rewarded, using her stature as a holy knight to sweeten the pot, but all the keeper sees in front of him is meat. When Guts catches up to his hostage and dispatches of pursuing possessed hounds, he pisses the keeper off with his actions, and it really shows. The man starts rambling about how anyone who is cruel to his family is fed to them, including the master of the house, so Guts decides to ask him if he killed the Count. The keeper corrects him and tells him he ate his master, as he assumes his released forms and deduces Guts' identity. Farnese freaks out because of all that she is seeing, but the keeper is delighted to see his meal return to him. He attacks Guts, and a fierce battle ensues in which the Black Swordsman manages to cut the apostle apart, much as he did in the manga, but this is where things take a turn for the worse. The keeper manages to nab Guts' leg in his jaws and tell him he's gonna eat him alive, and then wash the taste down with Barney when Puck notices the effigy hanging on the wall. It looks an awful lot like a life-size doll of a little girl, but the weird thing is that only the torso is visible. As Puck flies closer to examine it, he realizes that it is a real preserved human, and we see the reason behind the keeper of the hounds' obsession with Farnese's sweet noblewoman meat. His words, not ours. The keeper used to be a human who looked much like he does in his normal state as an apostle, even before he became one. He was shunned by the world at large for his ugly appearance, and no one looked his way. Indeed, the only thing that did not judge him for his ugly appearance were his hounds, who were also his closest friends. One day, the lady of the house passed by him, and she wanted to take one of his puppies with her. When he tried to take his friend back from her cronies, he was beaten to a pulp. The only thing that saved his life was the lady's interference, and following this, she became the sole apple of his eye. She saved him from the streets and brought him to her castle to become the keeper of their hounds, but he had fallen in love with her. The napkin she had given him to clean up his blood after the assault was what he presented to her as a token of his love, but the lady was terrified at the suggestion of having something romantic with him. She freaked out, and so did the keeper, who in his despair went to kill her, but somehow he ended up injuring himself and his blood entered the behemoth his hounds had found earlier in his life, which triggered an interstice and summoned the God Hand. Drowning in the depths of his own despair, the keeper asks the demonic angels to deliver him from his suffering, and they ask him to sacrifice the one person he loved and hated the most, the lady herself. He did it, and his first act as an apostle was to devour her lower body, followed by her entire family. He kept her upper body as a twisted keepsake, but ate even that when Guts used it as a distraction during their battle. If this scene feels familiar, that's because it mirrors the way the Black Swordsman used Theresia to lure the Slug Count into lowering his guard before landing a lethal blow, which is what happens here as well. After bringing the keeper of the hounds down to his knees, Guts starts tormenting him with his rapid-fire crossbows as he interrogates him about the God Hand's location, much like he did with the Snake Baron. When the keeper cowardly admits that he doesn't know, Guts puts him out of his misery before dealing with his own horse and a possessed Barney. Putting all of this together, the Keeper of the Hounds is technically a combination of three minor apostles from the manga: the Slug Count, the Snake Baron, and the unnamed wandering apostle who attacks Godot's cottage. Considering the fact that the studio behind the 2016 animation managed to stuff that much character lore into one being and convey all its major beats within 15 minutes is honestly impressive, no matter what your views on the show itself are. But as far as the Keeper is concerned, this is the end of the line. He was a nobody who thought he found love in someone that clearly was just trying to help him, and she was the one who ended up paying the price. But that is the cost of being caught up in the current of casualty, we suppose. Marvelous verdict. And that's it for this one. There wasn't a lot to go on for this apostle, but we tried our best to give you all the appropriate context that we can as to who he is and why he does what he does. He definitely isn't an important apostle, but he is an iconic one for how simple-minded his approach to taking down the Black Swordsman was. How would you approach a fight with guts if you were an apostle? Let us know in the comments down below. And that's it from us. If you like the content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.